You know, for almost the entire history of humanity, we were on the move. We were a species of wanderers, our lives defined by a constant search for the next meal, the next safe place to rest. But then, in what's really just a blink of an eye in geological time, everything changed. We stopped. We settled down. We started building villages. This is the incredible story of that great shift, maybe one of the most important transformations our species has ever gone through.
Let that number sink in for a second. 99%. If you were to squeeze all of human history into a single 24-hour day, we would have spent about 23 hours and 45 minutes as nomads. That means our settled lives, our cities, this civilization we live in, all of that is crammed into the last 15 minutes. It's wild, right? That massive stretch of time is called the Paleolithic, and it really defines almost everything about our deep past.
And that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, after millions of years of a lifestyle that was clearly working, what could possibly be powerful enough to make us put down roots and just stay put? Well, the answer is a perfect storm of a changing world, a little bit of human genius, and the very beginning of the modern world as we know it.
All right, so to figure out the big why we stopped, we first have to really get a handle on why we were moving in the first place. For millions of years, our lives were tuned to the rhythms of the natural world. This was the life of the hunter-gatherer.
Now, don't picture people just wandering around aimlessly. A hunter-gatherer life demanded incredible skill and a seriously deep knowledge of the environment. You had to know which plants would heal you and which would kill you, where the animals would be in different seasons, how to read the weather. Your very survival depended on being a master of your surroundings.
The key thing to understand here is that moving wasn't a choice. It was a brilliant survival strategy. Think about it. If you stay in one spot for too long, you'll eat all the berries, scare off all the animals, and then you'll starve. Simple as that. Your main food source, big herds of animals, they were migrating, so you had to follow them. Plus, the seasons acted like a traveling menu. You had to move to where the food was ripe. And of course, the most basic need of all, water. When a stream dried up, you had no choice but to pack up and find a river that flowed all year. So this wasn't random wandering, it was purposeful, constant motion. So you're probably wondering, how on earth do we know any of this? These people didn't leave behind any books or written records. Well, their story is told through the things they left behind, and archaeologists are the detectives who piece it all together from these ancient scattered clues. Take a look at this map. These spots, see the red triangles? Places like Bhimbetka in central India or the Kurnool caves further south, these sites are absolute treasure troves. They're the places where some of the earliest people lived, and there are windows into this unbelievably distant past. And this was the technology that powered their world. These stone tools are the most common clues we find. Now I know, they might look pretty simple to us, but they were the Swiss Army knives of their time. You could use them for absolutely everything, from butchering an animal to chopping wood for a fire.
So where did they live? Well, often in places just like this. Natural rock shelters were basically prime real estate. Why? Because they gave you crucial protection from the elements, the blazing sun, the pouring rain, the biting wind. These weren't just bus stops, they were homes.
And this is where it gets really incredible. Inside many of these caves, we find their art. This is like a direct message from the past, a window right into their minds. The paintings often show wild animals, dramatic scenes of the hunt, and they're drawn with so much life and detail. It tells you exactly what was important to them, what they were thinking about, the animals they depended on to survive.
So for millions of years, this was the rhythm of human life. Move, hunt, gather, survive. But then, the world itself began to change in a really big way. And that change set the stage for the single greatest revolution in human history.
This timeline really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? The Paleolithic, or the Old Stone Age, that massive block of time is our 99%. All the game-changing stuff we're about to talk about, it all happens in the Mesolithic and Neolithic periods, those two little slivers at the very end. And the trigger for all of it was a massive shift in the global climate.
Around 12,000 years ago, the last great ice age started to come to an end. Now, this wasn't just things getting a little warmer. This was a complete reshaping of the entire planet's ecosystems. And this one moment kicked off a chain reaction that would change humanity forever.
So as the world warmed up, those giant ice sheets retreated, and in their place, huge grasslands started to pop up everywhere. This created the perfect environment for grass-eating animals. We're talking deer, antelope, sheep, goats, and their populations just exploded. For the humans who hunted them, it was like the world's biggest all-you-can-eat buffet had just opened for business. But all this new food around didn't just mean hunting was easier. It sparked a revolutionary idea. People started to realize, hey, wait a minute, maybe we don't just have to follow our food. Maybe, just maybe, we could control it. And this is the core concept of domestication. Now, this isn't just taming one animal. It's a slow, patient process that happens over many, many generations. People started to pick out the plants that grew the biggest grains, or the animals that were the most gentle, and they would breed them. They were actively changing nature to suit their needs.
And we can see the proof of this literally written in the bones. Take a look here. The teeth of a wild pig on the left are huge and pretty fearsome. But on the right, after generations of domestication, they became so much smaller. This same slow transformation happened with plants too, as people gradually turned wild grasses into the first crops of wheat and barley.
And the result of all this was a completely new way of life. It was a total game changer. Instead of being nomadic, you are now settled, tied to your land to care for your crops and your animals. Your food source went from being a lucky hunt to a stable supply that you grew yourself. And those small, roaming bands of people started to come together to form larger, permanent communities, the world's very first villages.
The result of this whole revolution wasn't just a new diet, it was an entirely new kind of human society. For the first time in history, we had permanent homes.
And if we go back to our map, a place like Mehrgarh, see it there with the blue square? That represents one of the very earliest villages we know about. We're talking about 8,000 years ago. And it's here that we can see all the pieces of this new, settled life coming together in one place.
So what was life like in Mehrgarh? It was revolutionary. Archaeologists have found the remains of rectangular houses, and some even had compartments that were likely used for storing grain. They were growing their own barley and wheat and raising sheep and goats for food. And we even get a glimpse into their beliefs. They had burial sites, and in some of them, people were buried with goats, maybe as food for the next world. That suggests some pretty complex ideas about an afterlife.
When you think about it, that shift from wandering to settling redefined everything it meant to be human. It created surplus food, which led to villages, which led to cities, and eventually to the complex, busy world we all live in today. It was the revolution that absolutely shaped our past. So that leaves us with one last big question to think about. What is the great revolution that will define our